That's a good pivot, actually, to the Iran war. While we have you, I figure we could ask you a few things about, where you believe this conflict is right now. You've been floating the idea that perhaps the U.S. could just kind of walk away. I mean, we are in this kind of limbo state right now. I'm concerned. We had Robert Pape on the show as well, who's also concerned that that wouldn't be a stable outcome, that it's almost very difficult to avoid the idea that because the economic damage would persist so long as the Strait of Hormuz remains closed, so long as you have Israel very much eager to get back into a hot war, that it would be a very unstable outcome. But how are you assessing where we are right now?
Yeah, I still think the best thing that President Trump can do right now is look at what Ronald Reagan did in 1984. Ronald Reagan was smart enough to say, hey, I got into this. I didn't calculate all the risks. Something came, it hit us. And now this simply is not worth the continued risk. And he made the political calculation. And I think the morally right calculation. He pulled our troops out to save more lives. But then politically, he knew that he could take some slings and some arrows. And through the strength of his personality, that politically he could get through it. And he did. And I think President Trump can do the exact same thing. If President Trump were to basically just do kind of what he does in most of his press conferences and interviews about the Iran war, if he just listed off all of the leaders that we've killed, all of the things that we've bombed in Iran, and just say we won, and then just bring our guys home, pull our the vast majority of our forces out of that region, because our bases and our continued presence in that region has proven to be more of a strategic liability than an asset. If he pulls them out and says that we've won, that buys us time. Now, ultimately, I can't disagree with what the professor laid out. I think he has a very good view of how things have strategically changed. However, we will avoid the most catastrophic outcome, which would be us getting sucked into a further escalation cycle. Because if we double down militarily, the Iranians are going to hit us back. Then we're going to take losses, and we're going to be in this cycle that takes around 20 years for us to be able to break, if we just look at recent history. So I think the most pragmatic thing he can do is just declare victory, declare it loud in a very Trumpian style, and pull everybody out.
But the problem, Joe, is right now, at literally today, this is part of why I wanted to have you on. You had this shooting, and now Monday there's a situation room meeting, literally, that's going to happen, where they're going to discuss whether they should resume bombing or not, by basically leaving us in this quasi, like semi-ceasefire, but with the blockade, and yet the still closure of the Straits of Hormuz. We have this impending energy crisis. Considering where and how you've seen the president act, and considering your own experience, you literally resigned, tried to plead, basically elevate the profile enough to try and change decision-making. Where do you think, and I'm sure you talk to a lot of people still who are around, where is Trump's head at? And are people willing to speak a little bit more truth to power now that the war has gone so poorly? How do you think things are going to go in that situation room meeting today?
I'm concerned that he is just going to have people around him that are going to tell him that the blockade is working, and that this idea that we can somehow get a backlog in Iranian oil, and that's going to make the Iranians basically tap and say that they'll do whatever we want, and they'll give up, their nuclear enrichment red line, they'll give up their proxies, et cetera. They'll give up their ballistic missile capabilities. I just don't see that as happening. The Iranians have shown over the course of 47 years that economic pressure really doesn't move the needle very much with them. And again, we've killed a lot of the moderates there. So our trade space for negotiations is limited. This is why I'm also more skeptical of us getting a deal with the Iranians than I was just 3-4 weeks ago, or even at the beginning of the conflict, because we've continued to kill the moderates. Every time there's a ceasefire, the Israelis do everything they can to break the ceasefire. And the Iranians are squeezing international energy, and they know that gives them leverage. So I think the president is going to be told, hey, sir, the blockade is working, just give it more time. The problem there is that the Iranians can endure much more pain than we can. They then risk there's a major risk then of the Iranians taking a shot at one of our ships in the region, which again starts that cycle all over again. The hardliners in Iran, the IRGC, I think that they almost prefer that outcome, because the more that we fight, the more emboldened they are, the more the population rallies around them. So us staying there in that region, I think, is just a massive mistake. I truly hope that the president also understands that if he wants the blockade to work, even if the status quo is to work, he's got to do more to restrain the Israelis. The Israelis are doing everything they can to light Lebanon back on fire, which the Iranians didn't have a lot of control over before this war, but now they do, and they're playing that card. So this is a situation that we've created, but now we have to restrain Israel. And it's got to be more than just like we put out a Truth Social post. We actually have to take away features of their military, the military aid that we give them, so they know that we are serious and we're not going to let them dictate terms or drive the direction that our country is taking.
Yeah.
Let's say, Joe, that Trump pursues your advice or goes in that direction. We stay in this kind of limbo state where we are right now. We all know Trump can spin a victory narrative, and that there's a significant chunk of the country that will be like, yes, you're right. This was great. How would you, though, looking at this independently at this point, how would you assess, even if we were able to walk away and extricate ourselves now, how would you assess the long-term impact and cost of this war?
And clearly, it hasn't been worth it. I mean, we've lost 13 American service members. They did not need to die for this. But also, just in terms of our alliances in the Gulf, there has been this illusion for decades now that the Gulf states can be our partners and partner with us, and they don't need to have much of a defense system because we will be their security guarantees. We'll provide all their defenses. That has been shattered. The Iranians have shown that they can reach in and they can penetrate all the defenses that we, in theory, had. The idea of us having a basing presence in the region, again, that those bases have proven to be more of a liability than an asset. So we're going to have to relook at our security arrangements. I'm also concerned that a lot of these Gulf states, they're not going to come out and completely reject us. They're going to want to keep us as their friends, but they're going to start moving away from the petrodollar. That's going to harm our economy. That's going to harm our status as the world's reserve currency holder. But then also, I think a reality that we're just going to have to deal with is if we do pull our troops out and we do look to have a more pragmatic solution to getting the Straits of Hormuz open back up again, we're going to have to just deal with the Iranians as they are. There's no military solution there. So at some point, whether it's after we fight a bloody 20-year war or it's relatively soon, we're going to have to just deal with the Iranians. And I think the sooner that we can get over that and realize that Iran is not going to be exactly as we want it to be. However, Iran has proven to be pragmatic. They are not the insane jihadis. They're not the new, ISIS, Persian version of ISIS. They can be dealt with. So I think the sooner that we realize that and just realize if we're going to maintain any standing in the region, any kind of relationships, the faster that we can start having realistic diplomacy with them, the better off we'll be. And again, I think if President Trump starts thinking bigger picture, this is something he's uniquely postured to do. He's a strong leader. The Iranians still, even though they don't trust him, they view him as a strong leader. I think he has a potential of resetting our relationship with Iran, even in the wake of all this. I think you need to take the tensions down first. That's why I'm recommending for us to get out of there. But I do think there's a potential for us saying, hey, a strong Persian government. I mean, right now we're dealing with the former leader of al-Qaeda in Syria. It's not a far cry for us to deal with a group of Iranian leaders that maybe we don't like, but we're going to deal with because they're an energy superpower. Geographically, they're a superpower. It's much better to be friends with them than having them shut down the Straits of Hormuz every time we get into a dispute with them. So I think if we just recognize the world as it is and move past our own pride, I think we'll be in a much better spot.
Totally agree. Joe, thank you so much for your time. We appreciate your analysis, sir.
Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.